This week on Supercars Torque, Jess is back. Scott McLaughlin silences his IndyCar critics. I preview the Bend and talk about a budget cap in supercars. The big news on everyone's lips this week is Jess Yates is back. She's had her maternity leave and will be back on the commentary team for the weekend, so that's something exciting. Scott McLaughlin has silenced his IndyCar critics, and surprisingly there was a lot of them out there on the bookface comment sections and things like that, because he didn't win his first two races in IndyCar. Well, technically, because he did one at the end of last year as well. So this would have been his fourth start and he got on the podium. Now, there's two races at Texas this weekend. I'm filming this in between the two races. So by the time you see this, he may have crashed and burned in the second race, but he did get a podium. Of course, his critics are going to say, oh, he got lucky with the yellows. Well, there was quite a few other guys who got lucky with that first yellow as well, including the guy who won the race, Scott Dixon. There was a few guys who were a bit unlucky with that. The issue with this race was that they actually, qualifying got rained out, so they had to start in their championship positions. So some guys like Will Power, who didn't seem to have any pace, he got unlucky with that first yellow and he kind of had no pace and dropped backwards. Alex Rossi, similar kind of boat. But Scott, yes, he did get lucky, but he had the pace to stay there. He wasn't dropping back. I think he'd actually passed a couple of guys, and then it was mainly through strategy. But if anyone knows about Texas, unfortunately it's a one-lane track kind of thing, so it is a little bit processional. But Scott did a brilliant job. He's got a podium now in IndyCars, and it was second as well. It wasn't a total fluke or anything. He was the best-looking Penske car out there all day. Apparently, 3 people have applied for the 2 racing entitlements contracts that are up for grabs. Tickford, Matt Stone Racing, and a mysterious third bidder. Is this mysterious third bidder just a phantom applicant to try and drive up the price? There were a lot of rumours swirling that Dick Johnson was after a third one to run a returning Scott McLaughlin because his failed IndyCar career. Well, I think we can put that one to rest. And Triple Eight were looking for one because they need an experienced guy to run next to Shane Van Gisbergen, and they want to run Brock Feeney. Both of those, I would be very surprised if either of those came about. The only reason Triple Eight ran a third car was because of Craig Lowndes retiring. It wasn't like they wanted to, but that car was fully sponsored and it was for Craig Lowndes, and he's a fan favourite and he sells heaps of merchandise, and he probably still does sell a heap of merchandise and all of that for Triple Eight. That's the only reason why they ran a third. And Dick Johnson, they ran like 3-4 cars back, in the dark days of Dick Johnson racing. It's just, that was purely to try and prop up the whole team. Like, they just needed money from pay drivers. I don't think they're in dire financial straits. Sometimes it takes me a bit to get my English out, as you can see. I think that Shell sponsorship is a pretty serious sponsorship deal. I don't think Dick's tipping in any of his own money at the moment these days, so I can't see those ones happening. I think if it is true, it's probably a left of field, a Super 2 guy that, like Kostecki's, or someone like Peter Adderton. My hunch is, though, it's a bit of a phantom one that's trying to, draw a few people out with the interest and maybe get the prices up a little bit. Although, essentially, Tickford's buying back their own contract, so doesn't matter what that one's worth. It's more what the GRM one, what Matt Stone's willing to pay for that one, I suppose. Some Gen 3 news has come out this week as well. They're going to have a GT-style roof hatch. This is so that you can evacuate out of the roof if you're stuck. Like at Tasmania the other year where they all piled into each other and a couple of guys were just sat there in the cars twiddling their thumbs because they were jammed in and they couldn't open either door. So you could pop yourself out of the roof. I'm not sure if this is a big... the only example I can really think of is that Tasmania example. There probably is a couple of others over the years. Okay, it's a good safety feature to have, but when we've got other big questions about Gen 3, is this the most important one at the moment? But never fear, Jamie Winkup's come out and said Gen 3 100% is going to be on the grid for 2022. The way he worded it was just a little bit funny in how he said there will be Gen 3 cars on the grid in 2022. Like maybe there's going to be a 2-tier thing where there will be some Gen 3 and some Gen 2 cars on the grid. Watch this space on that one. One of my faithful viewers, Kyle Hocking, made a comment this week about could we introduce a budget cap into supercars like they do with F1. In theory, this is a really good idea. In practice, it becomes very hard because in F1, every team has to build their own car. They have to run 2 cars. In supercars, you've got, say, the Blanchards that are running 1 car, or you've got Brad Jones Racing running 4. Now, also, then you've got, Walkinshaw races 2 cars, but they build their own, and they build their own engines. And then you've got, say, Matt Stone Racing that are running 2 cars, but they buy their cars and they buy their engines. So where do the development costs and all of that get filtered in? Where's buying a car versus building your own? Like, how do you weigh up those kind of things? How do you, like Blanchards, obviously, they need essentially more crew to run 1 car than what you need to run 2 cars. So say like with the truck, to run 1 car, you still need a big truck. If you're running 2 cars, you need the same truck. So how do that cost if you say you've got $2 million to run 1 car and $4 million to run 2 cars, and your truck costs you $500,000 a year to run? Does that mean you've only got $1.5 million to spend on the other stuff, while the 2-car team has $3.5 million then to spend across? So essentially $1.75 million on each car because of the truck cost. So then do you say, well, we take the truck out of the equation and then this and that and whatever, and then you find that the bigger teams that are spending mega dollars on a fancy truck or whatever are still spending mega dollars on a fancy truck, and then you say like, oh, well, we'll take, like with the stupid Formula One, oh, well, we'll take the drivers' salaries out of it, and we'll take the, Toto Wolff's salary out of it, and we take this out of it, and we take the travel costs out of it, and we take bonuses out of it or whatever, and then you're like, well, Mercedes has gone from spending, $11 billion to $11 billion, or, when you actually break it down, I think the Mercedes spend was affected minutely, while teams like Jet Force India and Toro Rosso and that still had a lot of money to kind of find from somewhere to make it up to the budget. Funnily enough, the Jet Force India's found the Strolls and they pumped in all their Aston Martin dollars. Or is that Aston Martin dollars? So great in theory, the budget cap for supercars. How you would actually do it in practice, I think that would be a very difficult one. And then when you start pulling things in and out, and if you put a value on building your own car versus buying one in, obviously it's going to be more expensive in actual dollar terms to buy one in, because you can hide some of the cost, I think. And then also, it's hard, like in Formula One, I'm not sure how they do it, but there'll be some costs hidden in, say, Walkinshaws, could hide costs in the caravan business and things like that. Tickford could hide costs in the car business, whereas the guys like Brad Jones Racing, you haven't got side businesses to hide the costs. So I think the way to go about it is controlling costs by Supercars, having the rights and producing a lot of the parts themselves. So the teams, we need a steering wheel, we have to go to Supercars to buy that steering wheel. So there's no, Triple Eight doesn't go and spend $50,000 or whatever ridiculous on a fancy steering wheel, and then all of a sudden everyone has to go and buy that fancy steering wheel if they want to remain competitive. Or there was a big thing years ago about the wheel gun, the rattle guns, and it was costing, like $10,000 per rattle gun, and then they had to be rebuilt every 3 minutes because they operated so quickly. But all the teams could go out and say buy a $2,000 rattle gun that was half a second slower, and you go, well, why are you spending so much? But because of how competitive it is, you had to go and spend that money, but it wasn't adding anything to the show. So I think if Supercars I really like the centralised kind of idea where they turn up with a Supercars truck full of parts, and you can go and buy the parts on the day as and when you kind of need them, and most of the parts are controlled, so you can't go and spend ridiculous amounts on the parts. But anyway, down in the comments, let me know if you think I'm talking crap, or if you think the budget cap idea is really good, and how would you make it work? There is some racing this weekend at the Bend. Saturday will be the usual 2 practice sessions, the super long extended qualifying that I'm not even going to explain it because it's just complicated. And then a 24-lap race. The Sunday we get the 2 baby 10-minute qualifying sessions that will probably be 1 run each because we don't listen and we just decide, you had 10 minutes at Symmons Plains, so we'll have 10 minutes at the Bend, where Symmons Plains is a 50-second lap and the Bend's about a 4.5-minute lap, or because it goes on forever. And then 2 24-lap races. So the races are consistent over the whole weekend. Last year, when we look at the results, Jack LeBrock and Bryce Forward both got on the podium. But we have to remember this was in the whole COVID tyre strategy, softs and whatever. Funnily enough, Fabian Coulthard was very competitive here. Scott McLaughlin and Shane van Gisbergen getting the other wins. I think it was a Fabian win because they were doing that overall thing a bit last year. I think Fabian actually won the weekend overall. Can we expect the Dick Johnson guys to be right up the front? Well, it has been a happy hunting ground for the Mustangs the last few years. We did even, Jaime got a podium there for the Kellys last year. Maybe they can kind of turn their lackluster results from the start of the year around and do a bit better. I think we're probably going to see Shane van Gisbergen win everything again, but I think some of the other guys are going to be a lot closer. If we go for a dark horse for the weekend, because it's a bit obvious just picking Shane van Gisbergen again, I'm going to go for a Will Davison win over the weekend. As I said, the Dick Johnson guys have been quite good, and he's just been chipping away at it, getting up to speed with the car. I think this one's going to suit him, and that's my prediction for the weekend, because I'm not going to pick Shane van Gisbergen again, because, that would be a very straightforward one to pick. Down in the comments, let me know who you think's going to take out the weekend, other than Shane van Gisbergen. Maybe we should have predictions for who's going to be second, because he's running away with a bit. But until next time, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.